Hello, everyone who's coming out of the waiting room. Welcome to the State of the Industry reveal. I know I am very excited. We've been working on this for a long time. As you're coming in, you should be able to get in the chat. I would love for people to drop in there where you're tuning in from. We'd love to know where everybody's listening in from, and maybe your company name too. So your company name and where you're located. Katie, first one up there. Hello. Lee,
Yeah,
Ron, Rod.
lots of familiar names there.
Lots of familiar names there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm going to give this a couple minutes to get everyone in here, and then we will get this rolling. We had a big boost in the number of people who participated in the study this year, and it looks like we have a big boost in the number of people joining the webinars. So we are very excited to be here. I'm sure I can speak for you, Leighton, on that. Thank you to everyone who's dropping in the side. Please post where you're from and the company you're from, and also where you're located. We would love to know who all is here. Leighton, any tidbits you want to throw out before we officially kick things off?
This is a big day. This is a big day. The industry has something today that it hasn't had before. When we launched this thing together last year, the industry received insight into data and trends that didn't have before, but now we have comparison. Now we have comparable data where we can see how the industry is changing, evolving, what's remaining the same, and what are some big eyebrow raising differences. And so this is a new day. This is a very important milestone for the industry, in my opinion. So I'm really excited to get into this.
Yes, I am as well. Okay, Braden, it looks like we're not quite seeing your screen, just so you know. We have some things going on in the background trying to get some slides shared for all of you, but there's still a lot of people trickling in. I'm just going to give it like one more minute as everybody's posting on here. Again, if you're new and joining us, welcome. Please post in the chat the company that you're from and where you're located. It's really exciting to see people from across the US, and I'm sure we have some Canadians in here as well. And we're really excited to dive into the state of the industry. Beautiful. All right. I've hit record. That was my one worry, that I was going to forget to hit record. So here we go. Welcome everyone to the C&R Lunch and Learn webinar in partnership with KnowHow. This is our 2023 State of the Industry reveal, and we are so excited for today's presentation and discussion. Again, my name is Michelle Blevins. I'm the publisher of C&R Magazine and the moderator for today's event. On behalf of myself and KnowHow, thank you so much for being here. My co-presenter today is Leighton Healy. He's the CEO of KnowHow. I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit more in a minute, but this is the second year C&R and KnowHow have teamed up to create this State of the Industry report. We hope there are many more years to come. This is a one-of-a-kind industry report that would not be possible without the contractors who were willing to put in their time to take the survey. We're thrilled that we had a 40% increase, more than 40% increase on respondents this year. And again, we have a record number of you attending the webinar today. There's going to be more webinars in the next couple of weeks. So the next couple of Wednesdays, I really hope that you have this same time slot blocked off on your calendars, because we're going to do some deeper dives into some of this data over the next few weeks. And we have some great experts that are also going to be joining Leighton and I as we dive deeper into some of these big trends. And I'll give you more information on that at the end, but there's more to come. It doesn't just stop with this webinar. Okay, I also wanted to give a quick shout out to the C&R and KnowHow teams for getting this report across the finish line and for helping out in the background today. This has been a labor of love by both of our teams and takes a lot of work to get it to where it is today. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand. So if you find the content valuable, please share with your colleagues and other members on your team. You are eligible for 1 hour of continuing education credits from the IICRC. You'll receive an email following the webinar confirming your attendance, which you can use to claim those CECs. We want this to be as fruitful as possible for you, so please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. You don't need to wait until the end. The chat is there for you, so please continue to chat and share your thoughts. Leighton is going to be the one that's really dialing in to the data itself, and I will be doing a little bit more commentary and trying to watch the questions. So please feel free to interact throughout. There will be a quick survey at the end of the webinar. I think it's just 3 questions. Please take that at the end so that we have some feedback to take into the next few weeks as well. That'll be really important for us. Okay, without further delay, I'm going to toss it over to Leighton. And Leighton, my friend, I want to start off with a question for you. What are you most excited about for today's big reveal?
You know what? There's so many things I'm excited about, but if I had to pick one, hey, I run a business. I have a team that I think a lot about how do I provide them with clarity as we think about next year. We're going to be committing capital and resources to decisions that I make, and I want to make sure that those decisions are as high caliber as possible. And so many of our attendees, pardon me, are thinking about either they've just come out of or they're thinking about some type of a fall planning meeting for 2024, and this thing is primed for that conversation. So that's what I'm most excited about. We've written this report in such a way similar to last year, where each section concludes with questions for management teams for action items to consider. And so that's what I'm most excited about is how this document can serve a practical need as so many teams begin to prepare for 2024, and so many leaders, like me, are thinking about what's going to be the structure and the content for that meeting. And so this is, from C&R and KnowHow, we hope that this will be a resource for you in those very important meetings that are coming up.
Yes, perfect. Well said. Okay, Leighton, let's dive right into the basics and the background of the study and kind of have you lay the groundwork of what the basic demographics look like this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's jump into that. So I think it's important for the audience to understand that this is really a very exhaustive report, and any type of authoritative data really starts with understanding, well, who participated in and how much regional coverage do we have? And, well, I mean, I'm an independent restorer, and this individual's a franchise. And so how does all that shape up? You need to understand all of that to really, I think, understand the magnitude and the reliability of this data. So let's jump right in. So the first question that comes to mind is regional representation. And also, where do we see representation from what I would say are the two primary business types in this industry? So as you can see represented on this map, Michelle, we've had broad, I think it's fair to say we've had regional representation from almost every state and province within Canada and the US. This is truly a North America-wide report. So I think, listeners won't be surprised where you see a little bit more depth of participation in the coasts, where naturally the industry just frankly is just a little bit more condensed, and there's a little more density there. But also, I think it's important for people to know that this is a North American wide report. Canada and the US share so much in common, and one of which is that, we share large elements of this industry. And then finally, one of the things that's new in this report is that we very conscientiously found times where we believe it was necessary to divide independent restorers from franchise restorers, as there are elements and there's dynamics that are a little bit more relevant. And so here you see that represented. And we can look at some more demographics here. So another component simply is the question of revenue and headcount, Michelle. And so we can look at that as well.
Perfect. All right. So this was kind of the breakdown. So Leighton, tell us where you found the median is. We talked about this as we were reviewing the data between our teams. The difference, you can have a pretty big skew if you're looking at the average when you have the big companies and then the independent, like kind of more everyday restorers, I suppose.
Right.
So where did you find kind of the median lies in the middle of the normal size restoration company? I don't even know the right word.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I come from a background having both built and run independent trades-based companies, and I've built and run franchise-based companies, both as a franchisee and a franchisor. So I really, I can relate to I would say each participant here. As a franchisee, one of the things you always benefit from is franchise networks tend to do a great job letting you know kind of where you stand, where you rank against your peers in the network. But you're not always aware of what's on the other side of the fence. You know what I mean? Like what's going on outside this network. And then similarly, when you're an independent, sometimes really it's hard to get a sense of like, where do we stack up? The average restoration company in North America did between $1 to $5 million of revenue, or they will this year, and so just to give you a sense of kind of where that's at. Now, if you could go back to that previous slide, So what you're seeing here is also employment. And so, companies also often wonder, like, well, where is my team size at? Like, am I a little bit bulky for my size? Am I a little bit leaner? And it won't surprise, I think, the average participant that by and large, the average franchise location is has a lower head count than the average independent. In the average independent, why is that? Again, I have some experience in franchising. A lot of franchising, they segment their population, their network population, in terms of more kind of owner operators, which tend to represent the larger kind of bulk of their locations, and then those kind of move into more operators, multi-location operators. And so it doesn't surprise me that within the franchise ranks, a larger participation of smaller teams, whereas where you see the larger teams, that's largely represented within the independents. And so I think that's important because, again, a person who's building a business in this industry, I think they need to understand, where we stack up to the industry around us, and where are we in reference to those around us. And I think for many, it's really inspiring to look at. There are some big companies in this industry, and that's exciting. And I think that that's very motivating. And there's man, there's a lot of diversity in this industry from a revenue mix and a population mix. And so that's I find that very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go into the services and revenue breakdown. This is where we're going to look at kind of where restorers are getting the bulk of their business. We're talking about water, fire, mold, those kind of things, breaking
Mm-hmm.
that down and kind of the revenue mix in there. And again,
Mm-hmm.
I want to play into Leighton's point of we really realized last year, and this is what we're trying to do year over year, take some lessons from the previous year and see what we can do better or break down even further, which is why you're going to see more of that differentiation between what the franchises are doing and what the independents are doing. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully then you can find your lane and figure out where your data points are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well said. Well, let's jump in. So let me tell everyone on the line something that they know, and what they know is that that this is an industry that's powered by water, particularly water mitigation. So no surprise, and this is actually up from last year. So this is up a meaningful amount from last year. Water continues to be the primary service delivered in this industry, and I think that's important because. And people say, well, tell me something I don't know. Well, something maybe we don't think about enough is that fire, water, mold, those are services that are really, I would say, commonplace for so much of this industry, to the point where it becomes a commoditized service, a service where we're largely using the same material, the same equipment. Heck, a lot of us are using, our staff probably look the same. At the end of the day, the question then is differentiation. How will restorers choose to stand out? Let's just kind of jump ahead here. 77.3% of restorers plan to scale and grow and expand their teams in 2024. What that means is how are you going to stand out when we all do the same stuff? And I think that's something that restorers have to really think about, because if you ask restorers last year and this year, what keeps them up at night? It's workforce. How will I continue to attract and fill my ranks? And I would say, within the context of looking at this graph, that we do a lot of the same stuff as our competitors, and so I think that's something to consider.
Perfect. I want to jump ahead a few slides here to I want to make sure that we're going to get through as much as we can before the end and open it up for questions. Leighton, let's talk a little bit about the residential versus commercial work mix. I think that that's a big trend that the industry is seeing, and more and more when you're at trade shows, you hear contractors interested in getting more into the commercial space and less into residential, right, which we also talked a lot about in last year's study, as residential could end up being a large opportunity for contractors because so many seem to be moving away from the residential space and wanting that commercial space. So that commercial work, what did we find out this year, and kind of comparing it to last year?
This is very interesting, Michelle. So last year, one of the things that was quite surprising was the volume of restorers who were planning to just take a bullish leap into commercial, and in many ways, looking to kind of cut off their TPA work, move aggressively out of residential, and then what happened? Look at how this year rolled out. Not a lot of movement, frankly, and so we have to look into that, and we do some corollary data. But at the end of the day, there is definitely a desire in the industry to move that revenue mix more towards commercial. But I think that there were some headwinds that companies hit this
Mhm.
year, from some of the factors in the economy, but also commercial work for those that are in commercial work. Even from my own experience, having landed huge commercial accounts, there are some I like to refer to as like operational infrastructure that sometimes people don't consider. You need to be in a strong cash position. You need to have relationships. You can't just snap your fingers and build relationships. There's insurance requirements and expanded liability. There's operational infrastructure and talent that has to be brought into play. And then you just think, well, and then how do we do that in a mix where we also maintain our residential side? So overall, I would say that by and large, there is a strong desire to increase the amount of commercial work. I think that a lot of people's bullish ambitions were really curbed this year, and we see 2024 as a year where that desire remains. But ultimately, I think that there'll be a lot of companies will be looking at next year as maybe a step towards commercial, as opposed to, hey, let's just start calling those phone numbers instead of these phone numbers. And that's I
Yes.
think that's pretty significant.
Yes. Okay. So, and then if we move this forward a little bit, this is one of those areas where we dialed down between that franchise and
Mm-hmm.
independent component. So, what did you find
Mm-hmm.
here what did we find here between the franchise and independent breakdown of the residential to commercial mix?
Yeah, top heavy commercial mix companies are primarily independent. And that doesn't surprise me. One of the characteristics, I think it's a unique advantage of being part of a franchise network, is that you benefit from these large negotiated carrier relationships, TPA relationships. And so that's just a dynamic where you have an outsized advantage in that kind of insurance driven work. Whereas for independents, I think by and large they're probably a little bit more strategically advantaged to go after commercial in some regards, and so we see that play out in the data. All that a participant needs to do is let their eyes fall down to those bottom two elements. That's representing companies where residential represents only 25% of the revenue mix, and you can see immediately independents break away. And then also when it comes to 100% commercial, not a single franchise participant indicated that they're 100% commercial. And I also think that's just it's part of the business model. And so for independents, sometimes you think, you know what, like should I join a franchise? If you really want to knock it to the park in residential and TPA, I think you have outsized advantages. If you want to go after commercial, I think that that franchise networks just have to approach it in a different way.
Yes. Okay. Perfect segue because we're going right into TPAs. I know that this is a topic that I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure a lot of people are here to see how this panned out this year. And
Mm-hmm.
I will speak for myself when I say, the results came in pretty heavy for what people wanted last year, but maybe the results don't exactly show that what people wanted panned out to be reality in 2023. So Leighton, before we jump in, kind of what was your opinion as you were combing through this part of the data?
This was one of the biggest, I think, eyebrow raising moments for me when we dug into the data. And you just look over just reams and reams and cells and sheets of data, and it was just again, you're like, holy smokes! Well, that didn't turn out how I thought it would. And
Yeah.
what we heard loud and clear in the report last year was a general sentiment to want to begin to decrease the amount of work that restoration contractors were receiving from TPA. That did not pan out in 2023. I think it's a combination of I had some opportunity to talk to a lot of TPA leaders this year, and they are I think they're making some really significant enhancements to their offerings. I think that made a difference. I think as well there were some big moves made within the industry, both on the carrier side and particularly the franchisor side to I think streamline and eliminate some of those obstacles. But by and large, we didn't see a lot of movement in this department. In fact, I would say TPA work is here to stay. And a year that we thought would see a lot of migration away from TPA, a lot of that didn't happen. So if those listeners have last year's report in your hands, you're going to see a graph that looks largely like it did last year. Last year, not their intent or desired revenue mix, but what percentage did that actually roll out to? And here, what you're seeing again, you can just look at some broad strokes here that the vast majority of companies in this industry, TPA work continues to be, and I think they plan to continue to make TPA work a part of the revenue mix. And that was surprising to us. And I think it shows, there's a lot of things that had to move for this to happen. And I overall, it seems positive.
Okay, so let's move forward and see the difference between where people say they want to be with the TPA work and where the actual TPA load is.
So what you're looking at on the left is this is the desired TPA, and then you look at these kind of actuals and in that desire versus actual, and so what you want to look at in this is specifically where do we see things actually panning out, and you see that there's actually very little movement here. And so for example, the number of organizations, I would just draw your eyes to that top number. The people on the top, where they say, in 2022 we desired to have no TPA work, and you can actually see that down below. It says, well, what was my desired in 2023? Really no movement there. And so there wasn't, we thought that might grow, that might expand. It didn't. And then you see companies that say, yeah, if it represents about 20% of my revenue mix, I'd be happy with no movement there. And really people who say, well, it's okay if it represents as much as 40%, not a lot of movement there. And then really interesting, those that said, I'm okay if it represents over 50% growth there. And so at the end of the day, I think, again, not to oversimplify it, I think that there were some headwinds this year, and I think that many companies found that working with a TPA provider was actually something that they were quite open with, and they, you get to pick your battles. And I think that they just decided, you know what, I think we're just going to optimize this relationship, and I think the data shows that.
This is an area that I hope to dive a little bit more into in the rest of this year and then into 2024, because I am curious. There's been a lot going on in the industry related to TPAs and relationships with contractors and getting paid, which we'll get into that topic a little bit further in the webinar. But I'm curious to look into this a little bit more. So, all right, let's keep moving forward and really quick go through, again, this probably is not that surprising to most people. I don't think looking at the balance of if you're an independent or a franchise, where your TPA workload lies.
Yeah, no surprise here. By and large, TPA work is overrepresented on the franchise side in most areas, and I think that aligns with their business model. I think that makes perfect sense. But at the end of the day, small restorers, smaller companies that have lower headcounts, that don't have robust marketing teams and business development and sales teams, I think it's very common that they'll get on a program and they'll meet the requirements. I think sometimes those programs actually help to create some rigor that's actually healthy at that early stage of the business. And then as businesses become more mature, I think they just do a simple cost analysis. They say, when we look at the margin that the TPA takes versus the cost it would take to really properly resource a marketing or business development motion in our business, what do we want? And I think some of it's just fierce independence, and some of it I think is just a true business decision. But overall, I think the data pans out. And for those that are watching this and screenshotting all this, just keep in mind that that this is the report. So you're going to get your hands on this, and you're going to be able to have a digital copy of all this. So no need to screenshot or anything like that.
By the end of the webinar, you're going to have access to the full download and articles and all the things. So yes, do not worry. Okay, we're going to move into now just like 2 quick slides on equipment purchasing and where contractors are generally getting their equipment from. But I realize this could be opening a can of worms a little bit. But as we're moving forward, everyone who's tuned in, if you have any thoughts on kind of that TPA data that we just went through, I'd love for you to put them in the chat, and or if you have questions, I'd love to see a little bit of conversation going on there and what you thought. Have you expected that TPA use in the industry would continue to go down, or have you thought, well, things would kind of even out, which is what it kind of looks like? Things are balancing out now. If you have any thoughts on what you just saw, I'd be curious to hear those if you want to drop them in the side. But for now, let's keep moving and talk about equipment purchasing, where people are making their equipment, and we're going to start getting into technology. Okay, let's just move forward, and Leighton, let's go through where people are purchasing their stuff, and then the use of remote monitoring technology. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's jump into this. So one of the things that I think the data shows very, very clearly is that our suppliers, our consumables, those kind of consumable providers, that's a very mature marketplace right now. And so what you're seeing is, there's a lot of really deeply entrenched market share We had thought last year that maybe groups like Amazon might make a greater entrance into this industry, but not really. Aramco gained some market share, which was really interesting to see. And then when it comes to remote monitoring, one of the things that's interesting is because so much of remote monitoring is kind of a step into IoT and efficiency and Bluetooth and but this is an increase. Actually, this number increased. More respondents said that they do not use remote monitoring than last year. They do not, and that's quite interesting. And part of that, I think we can all have we all kind of have a perspective on that. But my perspective is that generally when you're looking to adopt a new solution, it really has to be kind of a leap forward sometimes to be able to make that leap. And so one of the recommendations that we make in the report is that those leaps are probably coming, or they're probably in the works right now. And so to dog ear some funds to make that investment. There's obviously a lot of restorers who've been sitting on the fence about making an investment into remote monitoring. I would say it's probably safe to say that those advancements are in the works, and I would make sure that when they come, and it makes that order of magnitude leap that really I think moves the market, that you're ready to be part of that. But that's kind of reading between the lines.
I'm obviously in a public space. I'm in an office, but people can see behind me. So I just thought I would address the person in behind me. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so all right. So I want to go forward a couple of slides actually, because the next one's on disinfectant purchases and stuff like that. We can move on. You guys can see that in the full report. I think we should dive into technology and software. This was a really fun area for us to break down, and we're doing something a little bit different with how we're showcasing software usage and where people rank in the industry. So we're really excited to dive in here. And I'm sure Leighton, as a software person, this probably area for you is very exciting. So all right, let's dive right in here, Christy.
Absolutely. So to me, like sometimes when you're looking at data, there's a data point that sometimes is so outsized in its magnitude that you think that there might be a bug in the system, or you think that it's just loudly yelling in your face. And that was artificial intelligence. By and large, the front of mind, what is the most significant emerging trend front of mind for restorers? It's artificial intelligence. There we see remote monitoring, and but just look at this, participant. Look at how inflation and AI compare. I mean, inflation is I mean, every headline on news agencies that I look, it's about the impact of inflation in our market and the price of a loaf of bread, and those are important things. But look at AI. And so that's what's dominating a lot of the water cooler talk. And so I think that really harkens to a lot of what's really moving into this industry, and it's quite exciting. So we can move on from there. So when it comes to AI, one of the questions that we asked is, well, how do you feel about it? And when you look at this, over 70% are in one of two camps. Either they are open to it or they are embracing it. And so that is a strong sentiment. I think that artificial intelligence, even 5 years ago, was probably met with, is somebody taking my data? And I think that a lot of people recognize that actually the problem is my data is the pits, or I've been doing a poor job creating a rigor within the culture of my team to collect, and now I'm going to be in a difficult position to really actualize on the horsepower of AI because I haven't been a good data steward. And that's changing. And so, this is a big sentiment change in the industry.
It is. I agree. And Tony, I love your comment there about provide some practical information. So in 2 weeks, one of the main topic we're going to be diving into is getting paid, and the data that we found from the State of the Industry report. And I think a lot of the getting paid arena has to do with AI as well. And I know for certain we have a couple really good panelists who are going to be in there from companies that are really utilizing technology really, really well. And they're going to be able to speak to yes, Jenny, innovate or stagnate. That is so absolutely true. So we are definitely going to be diving into this AI topic more. And there's more also in the State of the Industry study that KnowHow did. They have a lot of actionable things in there. And then the C&R magazine that hopefully most of you are going to be getting in your inboxes in the next couple of weeks also has some practical insights on technology in your businesses and the use of AI. So there's going to be a lot more on that to come. So stay tuned. All right. Here's the big one, drum roll. Software companies in the room, here you go. Let's move forward. maybe.
Up in this industry. And so when you get your hands on that report, you can jump down to that kind of middle of the document, and you'll see those kind of very practical breakdown of where we see AI having a significant impact, not in 10 years, but within the next 24 to 36 months.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do you think we lost Christy? Should I try to share? There we go.
Looks like we're still okay. Yeah.
I think we
good.
lost me.
So this is an interesting way, and this was a different way that we chose to display the information this year. But everybody knows that in the software space, there really is one significant battle, which is job management is a critical part of how the business operates, and we have some very, I would say, robust solutions in the industry. And so here we see kind of how it stacked up this year, and some new participants on that list as well. Photo documentation as an element of meeting carrier requirements, as an element of being able to speed payment. The second thing that causes the most grief in this industry is speed to payment. And so there we see as well, a lot on the photo documentation software, and some some nice movement in that chart to represent a lot of the hard work these teams are doing.
Yes. Beautiful. Okay. And then it segues into ROI and where contractors are getting the best ROI on their investments. Leighton, and I know you and I have spoken about, gosh, any trade show floor that you enter these days, there's new technology players and a lot that have been existing for a long time. And I know contractors, I'm speaking to all of you. I know that you are looking for more pieces that work together and offer the best ROI. And I think a lot of contractors now are working on that suite of software that's perfect for them. So Leighton, break this down. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. You can look at the chart and see where the ROI is, but hopefully also this gives some of the software companies a little like, okay, well, let's try to nudge our way up in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, we these are anonymous surveys, huge, very large participation, and if you were to compare this to last year's report, a lot of movement, right? And so we see some familiar names on this list. And return on investment, which one offers me good bang for my buck? Encircle made some tremendous progress this year. We see, we continue to see leaders like CoreLogic's suite of products like NextGear Dash, Matterport. And then familiar names at Xactimate, PSA, and DocuSketch, and Mika. Obviously, Mika being part of the CoreLogic suite of products, and so just pure bang for your buck is what you're seeing here. And so yeah, bravo to these teams. These teams are hard at work. I have whenever I get a chance to talk to these teams, none of these teams are sitting idle. These teams want to provide world-class solutions, and so I think if you're using any of these solutions, you're in good company. You're in teams that want to be competitive. They want to be a leading solution. And so all of these solutions, I would definitely give them a tip of my hat to them.
Rod, this was an open-ended question. So what you're seeing here is KnowHow's team working to aggregate all the data and all of the individual responses into the most common ones. So that is what you're seeing there. All right, so biggest software challenges is where we're going next. And I thought that this was really interesting because it kind of leads into the conversation that I feel like we were having when I first entered the industry in 2015, getting rid of paper and moving into the technology space. A lot of people were working on the adoption of technology, and that conversation kind of seemed to go away, and it was more choosing documentation, or choosing technology. But Christy, let's go ahead and talk about the biggest software challenges, which I think is the next slide.
Yeah, no question here. I think no surprises. Well, maybe I'll pick on maybe one surprise. I think a common sentiment is that we just the volume of software is required to get the job done is a significant challenge, but it actually wasn't considered the largest challenge. In fact, training, functionality, and just general adoption really stood out as the primary obstacles. One of the reports, one of the studies that we put out in September was our new book, Winning with Workers. And what we showed in research was that actually the average Gen Z coming into this industry, a worker that's coming in anywhere from 18 to 24, has an average of 80 apps on their phone. They see their phones as kind of their digital Swiss Army knife. And for them, it's actually the volume of technology isn't a big thing for them. Really, it comes down to is, is it functional? Meaning, is this a clunky piece of junk, or is this something that's actually modern and fresh and intuitive? Am I provided training, or am I just kind of sent a login and expected to just kind of figure it out? Is there anyone on my team that knows how to use this tool? And then when it comes to adoption is really about how do we integrate this into our operation? How do we do things? And but these are some of the challenges that we saw.
Perfect. Okay, Drew, I see your question, and I'm just going to honestly say we're not going to reveal how many people totally took the survey, but we can tell you that obviously KnowHow's done a lot of research, and I've done a lot of research in this role and in previous companies, and then we can both guarantee you that there are enough people that participated both last year and this year to make sure that the data is very, very sound, and it is, and we would not have been sharing any of this if it was not, but I don't want to share exact numbers. And I'm guessing that the KnowHow team is kind of on the same page there, but I don't want to like not address the elephant question in the room because I know everybody was saying it was a good question. So that's the best answer I can give you, is that we can guarantee you that none of us would be producing this if we didn't know for certain that the data behind this is solid. Like, anything you want to add to that? Okay.
For data to be reliable, I think you have three things. You need to have regional representation. You need to have a certain volume and disbursement across a nice spectrum of responses. I think it's very important that the responder has access to accurate data, and so we took some steps to do that. We do a little pruning where we think that there might be duplicates from participation from different organizations. And then finally, there is a volume, there is a numbers game. And so, for those who say, I think that this should be representative of 10,000 restoration companies, our sentiments align with yours, and we would welcome you each year as we champion to try to get this broader and broader and broader. But from our perspective, as I think we're very good at data analysis, we believe that that the data that's been collected can be reliable, or is reliable.
Yes. Yeah, perfect. All right, so we're going to move into another big trending topic area, which is hiring and retention. This was the number one thing that was keeping people up at night last year. And so, another big issue this year. However, I think the overall trend is it's getting a little bit easier to hire, but it still isn't easy. And it's a trade issue more than anything. I think getting people into the skilled trades is a big deal right now. And there are a lot of stats related to how few people are coming into the trades now versus how many are going out. So I think that's a lot where our problem lies. And Leighton, I know that this is an area that your team has done a lot of additional research in addition to this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it.
Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. I mean, I know how we really are the leading solution, and how you get a new person from, I don't know what a power drill is, to delivering the way you want things done, and we spend a lot of time on that, and this is no question the biggest challenge. So, hiring and getting paid for work. Another way to say that is, maintaining competent, confident workers to deliver my services, and to be able to maintain cash flow. And not have things kind of like, just kind of be, stretched out there until, I'm really having a difficult time maintaining my operations. Those keep things up at night. So if you've lost some sleep in the last week or so because of staff related issues, you get a text message that I'm not coming in today, insert expletive, or you're looking at your bank account and you're really sweating, payroll. At the end of the day, you're in good company. Those are the things that keep people up at night. There's other things, no question. You could almost lump retention and hiring into the same component. And so there you push us over 40%. But at the end of the day, I think that hiring remains a big problem. This is a hands and feet industry. As an AI provider, we believe that, we are decades away from robots installing your toilets. We're going to need hands and feet. And the workforce, I don't think anyone's done more research on the incoming workforce than KnowHow. This is a workforce that's different. And with 77.3% of restorers planning to expand their teams next year, I think that, companies need to be thinking, this is not just we're going to post more Indeed ads next year. We need to fundamentally think about, how do we make workforce hiring and our employment experience, a strategic priority number one next year.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so the next two slides kind of go together, and I especially want you to almost jump to the effective salary on technician tenure. This was something great, I think, that came out of this year's study and what we found about just tweaking salary point just a little bit. And I realize that this is an area where it's going to depend on your region, right? So you're going to need to consider this ratio, perhaps instead of these numbers, maybe take this as a ratio over maybe people normally start and where you could start and how that could affect the tenure. So Leighton, dive into this a little bit.
Michelle, ever since I was 16, so from 16 to where I am now, I'm not going to reveal that, but that's a data point you're not getting today, folks. But from 16 to today, I've always had employees in various. So I understand, the grief of this trade-off between that balance between compensation and output and quality of staff. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm familiar with that. But the data is clear that companies that have found ways, and I'll just highlight that, found ways to be able to offer their staff a higher wage than average, are experiencing stronger retention, overall, especially in kind of those later stages, those kind of 3 to 6 year range. Now there's some exceptions in there, and you say, well, how do how do I not get squashed as a business owner and just be disincentivized? What we talk about is that in the report is that 2024 for many companies is going to be a year around operational efficiencies, around eliminating chokeholds and friction points to be able to free up margin and then reinvesting that margin as a retention tool into their staff. But I think the industry's been looking for a long time for information like this, and I think this is a very practical data point.
I agree. Okay, keep pouring questions into the side if you are interested. Does this only include the WRT category? How about reconstruction? Is that next? Do we have a breakdown like that? I don't think that we have a breakdown quite like that.
It's a good question. So we didn't segment it based on reconstruction versus mitigation. This is really just a response to allowing the respondents to say specifically to the technician role. And so however they would classify a technician is what's reflected here.
That's a good question, Rod. Good question. Okay, so we do have some data on supervisor wages and stuff like that, but our webinar that we're doing next Wednesday, is going to be on hiring and retention. And as we're getting close on time, I want to keep us moving forward. So you're gonna have to download the report or come back next week, or both, ideally, for us to dive a little bit more into the for the supervisor kind of data and what we saw there. So let's jump forward to getting paid. This is another big, we chose just like the big overarching topics to cover in this webinar, the things that we knew that people were going to be most interested in learning about right out of the gate, before we dive deeper into those in the next few weeks. So, all right, getting paid. Obviously, people are looking to get paid faster. That is just the overarching theme and question here. So Leighton, go ahead and dive into this.
Like last year and this year, number one was staffing. Number two was payment and the speed to get payment. And so this is an area when you're thinking about, where will we innovate? This is not an industry with people that have a lack of creative ideas of how we can enhance our business, but to give yourself, leverage the data and say, hey, let's make sure we really have a tight approach to solving for our staffing challenges and our payment challenges. So no question, what you're seeing across the board is that that companies are making some improvements in how fast they're getting paid, but not significantly. Now, there's a lot of factors inside this. I really think that the opportunity here is when you are considering your what I would say your AR reports and kind of all those aging reports, and for you to think about like, okay, well, this is how it is today. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Compare it against the state of the industry and understand where you rank up with your peers, because I think that's very healthy. If your numbers are really off in the wrong direction to the state of the industry, you have to really give some consideration to how are you going to make substantial changes to your process. If you're beating the averages, you know what, then you may want to be able to just move on to other areas of your business that may need a little bit more attention. But I think this is very helpful. Not a lot of progress being made. Restorers are still having a hard time getting paid in a timely manner, and I think we're seeing a lot of technology solutions coming in that are trying to impact that.
So for people who are listening or watching, I'm curious, can you drop in the comment box that what you think your biggest challenge is on getting paid. Is it working with adjusters? Is it the software piece? Is it your documentation? What is it? What is the number one hurdle you believe is preventing you from getting paid in maybe that 30 to 45 day or less ideally window? And Leighton, keep going for it, because I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end.
Right, right. So this is a chart that we make available in the report. I think it's very helpful. It's one of those charts where you kind of put your finger on a row and a column and you kind of, find the cell that represents. But what you want to do is you want to say, well, what is our revenue mix looking at that y-axis? And you say, well, our revenue mix is probably around 50-50 residential commercial. And then really looking at, okay, so, where is the industry average in terms of payment? And those percentages are representing, essentially what percentage of respondents are saying that it's taking that long to get paid at that revenue mix. So this is a comparative exercise. And so it's taking speed of payment and then cross-referencing that against revenue mix. This is a very helpful slide to be able to analyze where do we fall across company averages. This is the type of information that like you would have to talk to, like you would have to convince a huge population of business owners to give you very sensitive information to be able to produce a chart like this. And so I hope that a chart like this really helps a company deep dive and do a bit of a self-assessment on timing based on revenue mix.
I want to add a note there. I want to thank the contractors who did weigh in this year. And, one of the pieces of feedback we got last year was, hey, could you provide us the list of questions before I go in and start taking the survey? Because we are asking in some cases for some pretty intricate data that's helping us come up with information like this, which hopefully information like this, you're also able to take into your conversations with your teams and think, how can we overcome this? And also as an industry, how can we help move the needle now that we know, yeah, this is really what the industry looks like. This is really a pain point. So how can we, move the needle forward? So thank you we love the comments and feedback that we get, that we got last year and that we're already getting this year on things that we can do last year. We don't always get to incorporate all of it, but we try to do what we can because we want this to be the best possible result and survey for all of you to use day to day in your businesses as well. So okay, so changes in collection we did that already. Okay, so we're going into estimation software. It looks like we're gonna have about 10 minutes for Q&A, so hopefully you guys have some questions. This probably doesn't come as much of a surprise. It maybe doesn't even need a whole lot of talking through. Xactimate is number one. CoreLogic claims, which is, kind of moving up, and people are asking if there's, more training with that kind of software, but this is kind of where the industry lies. Leighton, any tidbits there to add? It's pretty cut dry on that one.
Only to say that, when you have industries where there's just really an outsized leader and you see such a rapid advancement of technology, most of the time when you listen to major technology leaders, like of the, leading, top 100, top 10 technology leaders, what they'll tend to say is this: I'm not afraid of my competitor. I'm afraid of the two young guys in their basement cooking something up that's going to kill me. And I think that's how I would relate it here, is that I think that there are some significant, titan battles going on in the estimating world, but also who knows what's cooking, because there are the ability for AI to streamline functions like this. I would keep your eyes out. And I've said this before, I would dog ear some, innovative, kind of testing capital for some things that I think would probably hit the market in the next 2 to 3 years here.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. M&A is our last section here, I believe, going through here. And this is something that people are talking about a little bit less, in my opinion, but it's still happening. I've spoken with several brokers in the industry that have kind of their opinions on what's happening in the market. We did see something interesting in 2023 with private equity coming into the franchisee space and investing in individual franchisees and what that can look like for a large franchisor. That's kind of an interesting dynamic that we're seeing now. So let's quickly go through these last two slides. And if you have questions, feel free to start dumping them in the Q&A, and we'll try to get through as many as we can in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're seeing here is, I think, some important questions is, have you been approached by someone who's interested in talking about acquiring your company? And so what you're seeing overall is you're seeing a decline in that. And so I think that that harkens to the fact that a lot of those, there's a finite number of companies that are probably at a viable stage or could become, or could have a horizon of a viable stage in the next couple of years. A lot of those conversations have happened, or they've probably raised their hands. And so I think this is proven, kind of approaching more of a mature position in the M&A. But the other thing I would say is that because we've seen so many transactions from an M&A perspective, there's a lot of people that you could pick up the phone and say, how did it go? And so one of the things that we comment in the report, and we've seen it definitely in other capital environments like private equity and venture capital, is that because there's such a volume of transactions that have been happening over the last decade or so, that these acquirers are starting to really think about what life after the acquisition is like. And I think that that's something that I think the industry really ramped up acquisitions, and now we're in that period of time where everyone, a lot of people know someone who's acquired. It's easy to pick up a phone and say, how's it going? And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for acquirers to say, what is it like to get grafted into our portfolio? What type of resourcing and support? Because when you look at the data here, one of the things that the data tells us is that by and large, when an acquisition happens in your industry, there's not a significant loss of revenue in non-acquired businesses. In fact, in many ways, they said that actually we found out that a business was acquired and we actually grew. And so one of the things that I think is possible is that if there's been an acquisition, understand that that team that was acquired probably went through a significant due diligence. There's probably a lot of fatigue there, and there's probably a bit of a champagne popping celebration. And then there's probably a period of where they want to catch their breath, great revenue opportunity. Rather than being intimidated by an acquisition in your backyard, you might see that as a strategic opportunity to take some market share. And then for the acquirer, I think there's an opportunity there to now start to think about, what is our post-acquisition strategy, and is that a really tight playbook?
Perfect. Okay. All right. So questions to jump in here. Feel free to ask questions. I did have one come in more through the Q&A. So Leighton, dive a little bit more into what you're seeing as like the overall challenge when it comes to hiring in the industry. Is it finding the candidates? Is it finding qualified candidates? What's kind of your take on that?
Yeah, I think that it's a little bit unique to each location, but
Sure.
I think if we were to think about broad themes, I would refer them to, we did the largest study in the industry called Why Workers Quit, which is an analysis of what causes challenges in terms of attracting, retaining, and accelerating staff within this industry. So, I'll try to simplify it in saying this: is that when it comes to attracting staff, most restorers, I would say, either fail to give that enough attention in terms of how do we position our company in a way that appeals to the incoming workforce. There's a lot of information out there that helps to understand and clarify what young people are looking for in employment. I think our data has demonstrated that over 60% of new entrants into this industry have never been in a general construction role, and so there is a need to be able to really start from square one. In addition to that, we see an outsized number of women entering into all roles in the industry as compared to years before, and so really ensuring that a company is adapting itself to just be a very receptive environment to women in many roles that may not stereotypically be associated with women, technician roles, crawling through the crawl spaces. We're seeing growth in those areas. And then finally, I would say, and we've been saying this for quite a while, but I really believe that we're in a phase of the industry where companies are not opportunity restrained, they're worker restrained. And so when you think about that, that should influence how you market and promote your business on tools like Google, on your website. It makes sense that you should be, your marketing should be targeting consumers. No? Well, the reality is that a lot of marketing and promotion and what you can see inside my business, rather than appealing to the consumer, should probably be appealing to potential applicants. And so there's an opportunity there. When it comes to retaining staff, again, we've done some good work on that. I think I could summarize that in the reasons why workers quit. So we've surveyed more people with the question, anonymously, why do good people quit in your company? It's a very safe place to go off and be honest and be transparent. And the majority of people that quit in this industry, number one, they felt that their first 2 to 4 weeks was chaotic, unstructured, and the promise of support was not there. You know, we're very passionate about and KnowHow about being that onboarding solution as well. There's a lot of reference to conflict at the manager level, at the project manager level, and how that pushes people out the door. And then a lot of it is it's very difficult for me to see any kind of upward mobility. I think companies are really thinking about, how do we really make it clear to our team members that there's opportunity for growth, and I think that's challenging. You know, how do you actually build those career pathways? How do you build that infrastructure to show opportunity for growth, especially considering that a lot of restorers are smaller? What kind of opportunities are there? You know, there's more that we talk about in our recent study, Winning with Workers, about how you more retain people with a world-class employment experience. It's a meaty topic, but at the end of the day, if you've got a management meeting coming up this fall to plan for next year, do not make the mistake of giving 75 to 80% of it to sales and marketing, and then just tacking on a little bit of hiring. And I think that it should represent at least 40% of that meeting. What is the employment experience we offer, and how are we bringing people in? No question, the number one way to get great workers is to have an amazing employment experience and have a rich referral program, hands down.
Yes. Totally agree. So you can read more about that in the State of the Industry issue that C&R is producing, and also be sure to download the full report. So we are going to put up a slide here that has the QR code where you can go and download the full report. You can find most of it at stateofrestoration.com. You can also find C&R's article on this. That also, we're going to be releasing a number of articles from industry experts related to this over the coming weeks and months, honestly, and also have more content and podcasts and all of that coming out. If you have any more questions, feel free to shoot them to me. It's michelle@cnrmagazine.com, and our teams will do the best to get the answers that you are looking for. Please join us next Wednesday, November 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern for the second State of the Industry webinar, where we will dive further into hiring and retention data and bring in some industry experts to offer their insights. The following Wednesday, November 15th, we will be discussing getting paid, the data and trends there, which again is going to tie a lot into technology and that AI piece. Again, we have some special guests lined up for that webinar. Be on the lookout for an email within the next 24 hours confirming your attendance if you're looking for those IICRC CECs. Thank you all for attending. Leighton, is there anything else that you want to say before we wrap it up?
I would just say up Periscope. You know, this is an opportunity for you. You know, we can spend so much time under the surface, our head down as we build companies. And I would just challenge you to use this data and use this report. There's no cost associated with it. You know, this isn't some strange revenue machine. You know, this is really, we want the data. C&R wants the data. And so we really believe in being a team player. And so up Periscope, find time over the next, whatever it is left in the year, 100 days, and to be able to park your management team, send the Periscope up, look at this, look at the data, and just ask yourself, like, what does this mean for us? And I think that is a very important exercise to do. It's something that all the restorers before you could not do. And so take advantage of this.
Yes. Absolutely. I agree. And again, Leighton mentioned at the beginning, what you just saw today, we had hundreds of pages of data, right? This was the overview. There is still so much more in the study and more that we're going to be talking about. So this was the tip of the iceberg. We look forward to seeing you all again in the next couple of weeks. This will also be available on demand in case you missed that snippet, or in case you want to share with your team. So you can go to the C&R website under webinars. This will be there in the next couple of days. So be sure to share this. Share. I know Leighton and I agree that the data is meant to be shared as widely as possible. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.